How do you think the experience of next generation with museums is going to be different than the one that you had as a child?
My childhood museum was the Royal Ontario Museum here in Toronto, and at that time you could get on the subway for 25 cents, you could go to the ROM for free, and you could actually knock on the door of a curator and talk to them. There were real people there who were doing something. And I think that that almost typifies what the museum experience should be for future generations. Public transportation should be very cheap, museums should be free, and they should have access to the people who work in them.
And you're seeing more and more directors with blogs, and that is,
exactly.
An access point where you're actually speaking to the person directly.
Exactly.
My experience as a child was in the first museums I went to was really to be poring over collections of mostly arrowheads and other things from archaeology from First Nations peoples in Canada, and finding interesting ones and so on, and then trying to find out more about them or making drawings of them or whatever. If you look at our manual museum learning, you'll find a good case study there which projects precisely that kind of future for museums, which consists of really a visible storage type of organization plus a kind of library backing, using, of course, digital media with both images and text about the objects.
It's a knowledge age, and the young people, like your kids, for example, maybe our grandchildren, they're used to, as Barry says, getting the information that they want, when they want it, and for free.
Do you think they'll still need to collect things?
Well, there is certainly no sign of any decrease, and in fact there's every sign of enormous increase in the production of contemporary art. So as far as art collections are concerned, they're booming, and they can't possibly get big enough, fast enough, and so on. The other area of collecting, of course, is also in natural history with specimens and so on. And there, of course, we have the whole tremendous story of the environment, of relating to the environment, and what's to be done with with specimens, endangered species and what have you. All that research absolutely depends on having the real specimens. It cannot be done online or whatever. You have to be dealing with the actual specimens, and so that's an enormously important responsibility of Natural History Museum.
It's like saying, will people still write novels? As long as there are stories, there's a need to collect the material aspects of those stories.
One of the fundamental issues that we carry forward into the 21st century and over the next 30 or 40 years is the issue of collection ownership, the ownership of artifacts, works of art, and specimens. And the problems that have arisen around that are, of course, all kinds of claims for return of objects to the places from which they have originated. But ultimately, the long-range solution to that has to be to simply dissolve the fundamental issue of ownership, to have some kind of international UN level or whatever recognition that ownership of these objects is in fact global, that stewardship of them may be in various places. Obviously, if this museum has the right environmental conditions and the right equipment to take care of certain things, it's a good place for them to stay. On the other hand, they have to be available to be able to go out to other places that are equally able to take care of them while they're there and provide access to them.
But very, arguably that's what's happened to date, and the argument that people don't have the adequate conditions for these objects is the one that basically justifies the complete West owning everything, and the rest of the world
adequate
not.
Staff also,
Exactly.
adequately trained staff.
And you have such discrepancies of facilities, of operational budgets, of whatever. I mean, how do you suppose that actually you're going to address that inequity?
Resources have to be put to providing the facilities and providing the training so that you have the people capable of taking care of the things, and the facilities for them have to be provided. So that's a long-range financial commitment as well as a philosophical one.
Do you think museums' roles in society is going to change, and in which way?
Well, I think that museums have to become even more centers of humanism, for lack of a better word, in societies, both locally and globally. We're living in an age when knowledge is more and more important, and museums have to be those open places, those forums for exchange, the the term agora is often used for. They have to be places where everybody can go, everybody can be, everybody can feel comfortable. One of the problems with the word museum for most creative artists is they think that things go into a museum when they're dead and they're in the past and they're completed. So I think that museums have to do more work to make sure that they're seen as vital places for discovery. I think globally they have to be able to bridge the gap between people striving for identity and their equal striving for global knowledge and information. And I think that that's really a very crucial role that museums play, universities play, and museums in a very special way. So I guess what we're saying is, just as we, I think, accept the idea universally that universities should be everywhere, and you know, we should, people help build universities throughout the world, and we have the spread of universities and higher learning and higher education, and there's a need for basic education too, and basic literacy as well. Museums should be part of that. Everyone says, well, you should have K-12 education in this village, but no one necessarily says that, well, this village needs a museum. So it's almost like a universal right to a museum. But there's no point having a universal right to a museum if there isn't a notion that what is in the collections of the great museums really need to be universally accessible. I worry a little bit if the move to the virtual museum isn't, it's fine, it's great, it's a form of information, but I worry that people are going to say, well, we don't need to have museums in this poor country or in this poor neighborhood or in this poor place, because after all, they can go online and they can see everything, because going online and seeing everything isn't really the same as actually connecting with the human story. The more we have screen experiences like this one, the more we're fixated on our cell phone screen or on the computer screen or going to movies for relaxation, whatever, the more people will really value three-dimensional experiences, and that's the essence of a museum. It's the experience of a three-dimensional object in three-dimensional space, and then the other people in that three-dimensional space. And so to that degree, it's a real building block of civil society. I myself don't think that civil society can only exist in a virtual world. It needs a three-dimensional world to really thrive.
So my final question is, where do you think the most important museums of the future are going to be?
Well, I think there's no question that we see the spread of museums much more decentralized than it was, and you know, major museums are being built, have been built, are being built in the Arabian Gulf, in China and India. We have the absolute end of any centering of the art world in New York or London or Paris or Cologne or whatever.
I think the big trap would be to get hung up on the issue of who owns it and the financial value of it and the protection of that financial value. The big effort should be in this whole dimension of the work of humanity belongs to all humanity, how to make that happen.